Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Stories. Dear Lord, bless my precious readers with joy, health, and peace. Guide their paths, ease their burdens, and fill their hearts with love. May you protect them always. Amen. My beloved readers, your presence in this journey has made every word meaningful. Like delicate flowers in a garden, each of you brings unique beauty to this story. I've poured my heart into these pages, sharing both moments of tender romance and deep emotional connections. I'm here today asking for your honest thoughts, because your sincerity helps me grow as a writer. Whether the romance feels as complex as quantum theory or as natural as breathing, I want to hear your true feelings. Are there moments that touched your heart, places where the story could be stronger? This isn't just my story anymore, it's ours. Together, we've created something special, and I want to nurture it with care. Your feedback, your suggestions, your critiques, they're all precious gifts that help this garden of words flourish. When I realize I am unable to satisfy you with my words, I will quit. With deep appreciation, Mr. Peter, let's move towards today's story. The Miami sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, casting long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Prince Industries' penthouse office. Shannon Prince stood at the edge of his glass empire, 50 stories above the city he'd conquered. At 38, he'd built an empire that others only dreamed of. But lately, an emptiness had crept into his soul that no amount of success could fill. His reflection stared back at him from the tinted glass, strong jawline, piercing blue eyes, and the kind of confidence that came from knowing you could buy and sell entire companies before breakfast. His custom Tom Ford suit fit him perfectly, a subtle armor of power and privilege, but beneath that polished exterior, something restless stirred. The gentle click of heels against marble broke through his reverie. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. The sound had become as familiar as his own heartbeat over the past 3 years. "The quarterly reports you requested, Mr. Prince." Bella Dakota's voice carried the same quiet confidence that had first caught his attention during her interview for the CFO position. He turned slowly, taking in the sight of her. She stood in his doorway like a vision in a fitted emerald dress that complemented her deep umber skin perfectly. Her dark eyes held that familiar mixture of intelligence and challenge that had made her invaluable to his company, and increasingly dangerous to his peace of mind. 3 years, he mused aloud, moving away from the window. Hard to believe it's been that long since you walked into that interview room. Bella's lips curved into a knowing smile as she crossed the room, her Louboutins clicking against the floor like a metronome counting down to inevitability. 2 years, 8 months, and 17 days, to be precise. She placed the reports on his desk, close enough that he caught the subtle scent of her perfume, something exotic and intoxicating. But who's counting? Their eyes met, and the air between them crackled with unspoken possibility. Shannon felt the familiar tug of attraction, stronger now than ever before. He knew he should step back, remember his marriage vows, think of Maria. But lately, thoughts of his wife only brought a dull ache of disconnection. "Join me for a drink." He gestured to the crystal decanter that caught the dying light. The Peterson merger deserves a celebration. "Should we?" Bella's voice held a subtle challenge as she accepted the glass. "Or should you be heading home to your wife?" The mention of Maria sent a wave of guilt through Shannon, quickly replaced by frustration. Home had become a museum of past happiness, filled with polite silence and careful distance. Maria was always busy with her foundation work, and when they were together, the space between them felt vast and uncrossable. "Maria's hosting another charity gala tonight," he said, the words tasting bitter. "Probably won't be home until midnight." "Her loss," Bella murmured, taking a deliberate sip while maintaining eye contact. "Some of us know how to prioritize What's truly important? Shannon moved closer, drawn by the gravitational pull of desire and the intoxicating promise of something new. The city lights twinkled below them like a carpet of stars, and the last rays of sun painted Bella's skin in shades of gold. "And what do you consider truly important, Bella?" She set down her glass, closing the distance between them. "Power recognizes power, Shannon. You and I both know that what we've built here goes beyond quarterly reports and merger agreements." Her hand came to rest on his chest, and he could feel the heat of her palm through his shirt. The scent of her perfume enveloped him, making his head spin. Or maybe it was the scotch, or maybe it was the way she looked at him, like she could see past all his carefully constructed walls. "This is dangerous," he whispered, even as his hands found her waist. "Life without danger is hardly worth living," she replied, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "You didn't build an empire by playing it safe." The kiss, when it came, was like lightning, electric and inevitable, destroying everything in its path. Her lips were soft but demanding, tasting of scotch and promise. Shannon pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pressed against the small of her back. Bella's hands weren't idle either, sliding beneath his jacket, tracing the contours of his muscles through his shirt. Each touch was like fire, burning away his last threads of resistance. He could hear her heart racing, matching the frantic pace of his own. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, her breath coming in short gasps. "Do you want me to stop?" Instead of answering, Shannon kissed her again, harder this time, backing her toward his desk. Reports scattered to the floor as he lifted her onto the polished surface. Bella's legs wrapped around his waist, pulling him closer as her fingers made quick work of his tie. "You're beautiful," he breathed against her neck, trailing kisses down her throat. She arched into his touch, a soft moan escaping her lips. The city spread out below them like a testament to his power, but in that moment, Shannon Prince was completely under her spell. He didn't see the calculated gleam in her eyes, didn't notice how even in the throes of passion, she remained perfectly in control. Their clothing fell away piece by piece, creating a trail across his office floor. In the dying light, Bella's skin glowed like burnished gold, and the sound of her heartbeat filled his ears. She was a fantasy come to life, every movement deliberate and seductive. "Shannon." She whispered his name like a prayer. But there was nothing holy about the way she moved against him. Her nails raked down his back, marking him, claiming him. Time lost all meaning as they lost themselves in each other. The night grew deeper, the city lights brighter, and still they couldn't get enough. It was more than sex. It was power and submission, control and surrender, all wrapped up in the heat of their bodies and the taste of their kisses. Later, as they lay tangled together on the leather couch, Bella traced lazy patterns on his chest. "We should have done this years ago," she murmured. Shannon stared at the ceiling, reality slowly creeping back in. He had crossed a line tonight, one he couldn't uncross. The gold band on his finger felt suddenly heavy with accusation. "This can't happen again," he said. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were a lie. Bella laughed softly, the sound rich with satisfaction. "Of course it will happen again." She rose gracefully, gathering her clothes with unhurried movements. "We both know this was inevitable." He watched her dress, each movement as precisely choreographed as a dance. She was right. This had been building for years, a slow burn that had finally exploded into flame. The guilt was there, yes, but buried beneath a deeper feeling of rightness, of destiny fulfilled. "What happens now?" he asked, although he already knew the answer. Bella finished fixing her hair, every strand back in perfect place. "Now? Now we build something extraordinary together." She bent to kiss him one last time, a promise of things to come. "Good night, Mr. Prince." She left him there in his darkened office, surrounded by the scattered evidence of their passion. Outside, Miami glittered like a jewel box, unaware that its king had just sealed his fate with a kiss. Shannon didn't move for a long time, replaying the evening in his mind. He should feel guilty, should be drowning in regret. Instead, he felt alive for the first time in years. The emptiness that had been gnawing at him was gone, replaced by a dangerous kind of hope. His phone buzzed, a text from Maria. "Don't wait up. The gala's running late." He deleted the message without responding. In the reflection of the window, he could still see the marks Bella's lipstick had left on his collar, the slight disarray of his hair. Evidence of a line crossed, a bridge burned, a new path chosen. What he didn't see was the satisfied smile on Bella's face as she rode the elevator down to her own office. Phase 1 of her plan had gone perfectly. Shannon Prince, the man who commanded an empire, was now dancing to her tune, and he didn't even realize it. Tomorrow would bring complications, consequences, the harsh light of day. But for now, Shannon sat in his darkness, remembering the taste of her kisses and the sound of her heartbeat, knowing that his life would never be the same. The Miami night deepened around his tower of glass and steel, and somewhere in the city, his wife raised a champagne toast at her gala, unaware that her world was about to shatter. The pieces were in motion, the game had begun, and none of them would emerge unchanged. Chapter 2. Hidden Queen Maria Prince sat in her private office at the Dakota Foundation, surrounded by the evidence of her own success. The wall behind her desk displayed not the expected photos of charity galas and social events, but framed articles from Forbes, Fortune, and the Wall Street Journal, each one detailing the meteoric rise of what they called Miami's most innovative charitable organization. What those articles didn't mention was the vast business empire she'd built in the shadows of her husband's success. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow on her tailored Chanel suit. At 35, Maria carried herself with the quiet confidence of a woman who had built something meaningful. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon, emphasizing her high cheekbones and the determined set of her jaw. She was beautiful, yes, but it was the kind of beauty that came from inner strength rather than mere genetics. Mrs. Prince. Her assistant, James, appeared in the doorway. The board members are assembled in the main conference room. Maria nodded, gathering her iPad and a stack of proposals. The subtle scent of her Hermes perfume lingered in the air as she stood. A gift from Shannon last Christmas, delivered with a distracted kiss and a hasty exit to another urgent meeting. The conference room fell silent as she entered. 10 of Miami's most influential business leaders sat around the massive mahogany table, all of them there because they recognized what Shannon never had, that Maria Prince was a force to be reckoned with in her own right. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying the perfect blend of authority and warmth, "today we're discussing not just charity, but revolution." For the next 2 hours, Maria laid out her vision for expanding the Dakota Foundation into Asian markets. Her presentation was flawless, each point backed by meticulous research and innovative solutions. The board members leaned forward in their seats, caught up in her passion and precision. What none of them knew was that behind the foundation's charitable facade lay a network of technology companies and investment firms, all operating under different names, all controlled by Maria through a complex web of holdings. While Shannon built his empire in the spotlight, she had built hers in the shadows, turning her inheritance into a fortune that rivaled his own. "Brilliant presentation, Maria," Charles Montgomery, the elderly chairman of the board, said as the meeting concluded. "Your husband must be proud." A flash of something, pain, perhaps, or anger, crossed Maria's face before her professional mask slipped back into place. "Shannon's rather busy with his own ventures," she replied diplomatically. Back in her office, Maria allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She sank into her leather chair, one hand absently touching her stomach. The nausea had been getting worse lately, and her normally perfect sense of time had been thrown off by waves of exhaustion. "Mrs. Prince?" James appeared again, concern evident in his voice. "Are you all right? You look pale." Maria managed a small smile. "I'm fine, James, just tired." She glanced at her watch. Another gift from Shannon, this one from their first anniversary when his eyes still lit up at the sight of her. "What's next on the agenda?" Dr. Anderson called. He wanted to confirm your appointment for tomorrow. The mention of James Anderson brought both comfort and anxiety. As head of obstetrics at Miami General and a member of her foundation's board, he had been both a medical advisor and a friend throughout her years of trying to conceive. If her suspicions were correct, tomorrow's appointment would change everything. "Thank you, James. Could you clear my schedule for tomorrow morning?" Alone again, Maria pulled up the security feed from Prince Industries on her private monitor. She watched as Shannon worked in his office, Bella Dakota by his side. Something about the way they moved around each other made her stomach clench with unease. She remembered the first time she'd met Bella, at the company Christmas party 3 years ago. The woman had been perfectly polite, perfectly professional, and perfectly predatory. Maria had seen it in her eyes, the hunger, the calculation, the patient stalking of prey. "Just paranoia," she whispered to herself, but her instincts screamed otherwise. Her phone buzzed with a text from Shannon, "Working late, don't wait up." The familiar excuse sparked not anger, but a deep, resigned sadness. When had they become strangers sharing a home rather than partners sharing a life? The Shannon she'd fallen in love with, the man who used to surprise her with midnight picnics on their balcony and who could talk about their dreams until dawn, seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone she barely recognized. She turned to her computer, pulling up the encrypted files that detailed her true business empire. While the world saw her as Shannon Prince's philanthropist wife, she had quietly built a technology conglomerate that specialized in artificial intelligence and renewable energy. Her companies, hidden behind layers of shell corporations and holding companies, were on the verge of breakthroughs that would revolutionize both industries. "Mrs. Prince?" James's voice came through the intercom. "The developers from Singapore are on line 1. Maria straightened, pushing aside her personal concerns. This was what she was good at: building, creating, leading. She took the call, switching effortlessly into Mandarin as she negotiated a deal that would expand her hidden empire across Asia. The day passed in a blur of meetings, calls, and decisions. By evening, she had secured funding for 3 new international branches of the foundation and closed a deal that would add another technology startup to her secret portfolio. As she gathered her things to leave, her eyes fell on a recent photo of Shannon from a business magazine. He stood in front of the Prince Industries building, looking every inch the powerful CEO, but it was the woman standing slightly behind him that caught her attention. Bella Dakota, the new CFO, looked at Shannon with an expression that made Maria's skin crawl. On impulse, she detoured to a pharmacy on her way home. The pregnancy test felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in her designer handbag. Tomorrow's appointment with Dr. Anderson would confirm her suspicions one way or another, but tonight, in the privacy of her own bathroom, she needed to know. The penthouse was dark when she arrived. No surprise there. She moved through the space like a ghost, her heels clicking on the marble floors. Everything was perfect, pristine, and utterly lifeless. When had their home become a museum of their past happiness? In the master bathroom, Maria changed out of her business attire into a silk robe. She caught her reflection in the mirror, still beautiful, still young, but there was a sadness in her eyes that hadn't been there when she'd first married Shannon. Back then, They had been partners in every sense of the word, sharing dreams and plans, supporting each other's ambitions. The pregnancy test instructions were simple enough. 3 minutes to wait. Maria sat on the edge of the bathtub, her heart pounding. This could change everything. A baby, the one thing they'd tried so hard for in the early years of their marriage. Would it be enough to bridge the growing distance between them? Her phone buzzed. Another text from Shannon. "Meeting running late. Eat without me." Maria closed her eyes, fighting back tears. When had his messages become so impersonal? When had "I love you" been replaced by business-like updates about his schedule? The timer on her phone chimed softly. With trembling hands, Maria picked up the test. 2 lines, clear and unmistakable. Pregnant. She sank to the floor, tears flowing freely now. Joy and fear warred in her heart as one hand pressed against her still flat stomach. Inside her grew a miracle, a new life, a chance for everything to be different. "I'll tell him tomorrow," she whispered to her reflection. "Over breakfast, just like we used to have." What Maria didn't know was that across town, in a dimly lit office high above Miami, her husband was crossing a line that would make tomorrow's joyful news turn to ashes in her mouth. She didn't know that Bella Dakota was already weaving a web of lies that would tear their world apart. For now, she allowed herself to hope. She imagined Shannon's face lighting up at the news, imagined his strong hands cradling her stomach, imagined their family whole and happy again. Tomorrow would be a new beginning. Maria Prince, the hidden queen of Miami's business world, curled up in her empty bed, one hand protectively over her stomach. In her dreams, she was loved, cherished, understood. In her dreams, the distance between her and Shannon disappeared. In her dreams, they were happy. Reality would come soon enough. Chapter 3. Poisoned Whispers. Bella Dakota stood before her floor-length mirror, adjusting the emerald silk dress that hugged her curves like a second skin. The Miami sunrise painted her penthouse apartment in shades of gold, highlighting the satisfied smile that played across her perfect features. Last night had been a triumph. Shannon Prince had finally succumbed to her carefully orchestrated seduction. But seduction was just the first move in her grand game. Today would begin the real work, destroying Shannon's marriage piece by piece, whisper by poisoned whisper. Her phone buzzed with a message from her most useful ally, her personal investigator. Photos from Dr. Anderson's office ready, very convincing. Bella's smile widened as she slipped into her Louboutins. She had spent weeks laying the groundwork, creating a narrative of suspicion around Maria's frequent visits to the hospital. The fact that Dr. Anderson was merely her fertility specialist was irrelevant. In Bella's hands, those innocent appointments would become evidence of betrayal. The elevator ride to her office at Prince Industries gave her time to perfect her expression of concerned friend and trusted confidant. She had chosen her outfit carefully, elegant but not overtly sexy, playing the role of the responsible CFO while the memory of last night's passion still lingered in Shannon's mind. He was already in his office when she arrived, looking slightly disheveled despite his expensive suit. The sight of him brought back vivid memories. His hands on her skin, his lips on her neck, the sound of their mingled breathing in the darkness of his office. "Good morning, Mr. Prince," she said softly, noting how he tensed at the sound of her voice. "I have some concerning information you should see." Shannon looked up, his blue eyes clouded with guilt and desire. "Bella, about last night." "We can discuss that later," she interrupted smoothly, placing a manila envelope on his desk. "This is more important. I didn't want to bring this to you, but as your CFO and your friend, I felt you should know." Inside the envelope were the doctored photos, Maria and Dr. Anderson in what appeared to be an intimate embrace outside his office. In reality, it had been a friendly goodbye after a routine appointment, but through Bella's careful editing, It looked far more sinister. She watched as Shannon's face transformed from confusion to pain to anger. When were these taken? Yesterday afternoon. Bella lied smoothly. Shannon, I'm so sorry. I know how much you love her. His hands trembled as he stared at the photos. There must be some explanation. Of course, Bella soothed, moving to stand behind his chair. Her hands came to rest on his shoulders, feeling the tension in his muscles. I'm sure there is. Just like there's an explanation for all those private lunch meetings, and the late-night phone calls, and the way she's been so distant lately. She felt him stiffen under her touch as each word found its mark. Bella had spent months studying Shannon and Maria's marriage, identifying every crack and weakness. Now she would exploit them all. I've noticed things, she continued, her voice dripping with false concern. The way she looks at her phone and smiles when you're not around. The mysterious appointments that she never explains. I didn't want to say anything, but after last night... Shannon stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The Miami skyline stretched before him, but his eyes were focused on nothing. Why are you telling me this? Bella moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, but not so close as to seem predatory. Because you deserve better than lies and betrayal. Because I care about you, Shannon. More than I should. She reached for his hand, letting her fingers intertwine with his. The gold of his wedding band felt cold against her skin, a problem she would soon remedy. Show me everything, he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. Every photo, every record, everything you've noticed. Bella squeezed his hand gently before retrieving more files from her office. Each one was a masterpiece of manipulation. Real events twisted into evidence of infidelity, innocent interactions poisoned by suggestion and implication. Throughout the day, she fed him information in careful doses, watching as his trust in Maria crumbled piece by piece. She played every role perfectly, the reluctant messenger, the supportive friend, the woman fighting her growing feelings for a married man. By evening, Shannon was exactly where she wanted him, hurt, angry, and turning to her for comfort. They sat in his office, sharing a bottle of scotch as the sun set over Miami. I can't go home tonight, he muttered, staring into his glass. I can't look at her and pretend I don't know. Bella moved closer, her hand coming to rest on his knee. Then don't go home, come home with me. Their eyes met in the gathering darkness. The kiss, when it came, was desperate and hungry. Shannon pulled her onto his lap, his hands tangling in her hair as he sought to lose himself in her embrace. She let him undress her slowly, each piece of clothing removed like a layer of his resistance falling away. In the dim light of his office, her skin glowed like burnished gold, and the sound of her heartbeat filled the silence between them. You're so beautiful, he breathed against her neck, his control slipping with each passing moment. Bella arched into his touch, playing her role to perfection, while her mind remained coolly focused on her ultimate goal. Later, as they lay tangled together on his office couch, she began planting more seeds of doubt. I've heard rumors, she whispered against his chest, about Maria and the Foundation's finances, about certain irregularities. She felt him tense beneath her. What kind of irregularities? I shouldn't say more, she demurred, tracing patterns on his skin. I'm probably wrong. It's just there are questions about where some of the money is going. Private accounts, offshore transfers. The lie slipped from her lips like honey, sweet and poisonous. She knew Maria's financial dealings were perfectly legitimate. In fact, they were brilliant. But Shannon's pride wouldn't allow him to believe his wife could be so successful without his knowledge. I'll look into it, he said, his voice hardening. Another crack in the foundation of his marriage, another victory for Bella. She kissed him softly before rising to dress, knowing that leaving him wanting more was crucial to maintaining her power over him. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. As she gathered her clothes, she caught sight of their reflection in the window, her perfect body silhouetted against the city lights, Shannon watching her with hungry eyes. The scene could have been romantic, if not for the calculation behind every move. "Bella," he called as she reached the door. "Thank you for telling me the truth about Maria." She gave him a sad smile, adding just a hint of vulnerability to her expression. "I only wish the truth was different, Shannon. You deserve so much better." In the elevator down to her car, Bella finally allowed herself a true smile. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Shannon Prince, the man who commanded an empire, was dancing to her tune like a puppet on strings. She checked her phone, another message from her investigator. "Doctor, Anderson's office schedule obtained. Maria Prince has appointment tomorrow morning." Perfect. By this time tomorrow, she would have even more ammunition. By this time next week, Maria would be out of the picture entirely, and Bella Dakota would take her rightful place as Mrs. Shannon Prince, with all the power and privilege that title commanded. What she didn't know was that her perfect plan had a fatal flaw. In her focus on destroying Maria's marriage, she had underestimated her opponent. Maria Prince wasn't just Shannon's wife. She was a force of nature in her own right, and forces of nature had a way of surviving even the deadliest storms. But for now, Bella reveled in her victory, planning her next moves with the precision of a chess master. The pieces were all in place, the trap was set, and soon she would have everything she had ever wanted. The Miami night deepened around her as she drove home, the city lights reflecting off her perfectly composed features. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities for manipulation, new chances to tighten her grip on Shannon's heart and mind. In her designer bag, the photos of Maria and Doctor. Anderson seemed to burn with potential energy, bombs waiting to explode, ready to shatter the last remnants of Shannon's trust in his wife. Bella had more such bombs ready, each one carefully crafted to cause maximum damage. She had learned early in life that power wasn't about brute force. It was about patience, about knowing exactly where to plant the seeds of doubt and watching them grow into forests of destruction. And Shannon Prince, for all his business acumen, was proving to be fertile ground indeed. Chapter 4. Dreams and Discoveries. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Dr. Sarah Chen's waiting room, casting a warm glow over Maria as she sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. After 3 positive home tests, she needed the certainty that only medical confirmation could provide. Her Cartier watch ticked softly, counting down the moments until her life would change forever. She'd chosen to wear Shannon's favorite dress today, a cream-colored Valentino that made her olive skin glow. The fabric felt soft against her skin, a comfort as her stomach churned with both morning sickness and nervous anticipation. This appointment could be the miracle they needed, the bridge across the growing chasm in their marriage. "Mrs. Prince," the nurse called her name with a warm smile. "Dr. Chen will see you now." The examination room was bathed in natural light, making it feel less clinical. Dr. Chen sat behind her desk, reviewing test results with the focused expression Maria had come to know well over years of fertility treatments. "Maria," she began, her face softening into a gentle smile, "congratulations, you're pregnant." The words hit like a wave of pure joy, washing away years of disappointment and failed attempts. Tears sprang to Maria's eyes as one hand instinctively moved to her still flat stomach. After so many years of trying, after so many negative tests and crushed hopes, their dream was finally coming true. "I know how long you and Shannon have been trying," Dr. Chen continued, pulling up some charts on her screen. "Everything looks perfect. You're about 8 weeks along." Maria barely heard the rest of the appointment. Information about prenatal vitamins, upcoming tests, dietary recommendations. Her mind was already racing ahead, imagining Shannon's reaction. Despite their recent distance, surely this would bring them back together. This was what they'd wanted for so long, what they'd prayed for in those early years of their marriage. "I want to schedule you for an ultrasound next week," Dr. Chen was saying. "Would you like me to send the results to Dr. Anderson as well? I know he's been consulting on your case." "Yes, please," Maria nodded, thinking of how supportive James had been throughout their fertility journey. As head of obstetrics at Miami General and a member of her foundation's board, he'd been both a medical advisor and a friend, celebrating their successes and comforting them through their failures. The morning sun seemed brighter as Maria left the clinic, her hand repeatedly drifting to her stomach in wonder. She had a dinner meeting with potential donors that evening, but tomorrow she would tell Shannon. She'd make his favorite breakfast, create the perfect moment to share this miraculous news. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. "How did it go?" "Keeping my fingers crossed for you." She smiled, typing back, "All good. Tell you more at tomorrow's board meeting. Thank you for everything." In her car, Maria allowed herself a moment to dream. She imagined Shannon's face lighting up at the news, imagined his strong hands cradling her stomach, imagined them shopping for baby furniture together. This child would heal everything, bridge every gap, mend every crack in their relationship. She drove to the Dakota Foundation offices, her mind already planning how to share the news. Should she tell Shannon over breakfast, or perhaps during a romantic dinner? She wanted the moment to be perfect, wanted to see his eyes light up with joy, just like they used to in the early days of their marriage. The foundation's headquarters hummed with activity as she entered, but Maria barely noticed. She moved through the corridors in a happy daze, nodding absently to employees who greeted her. Mrs. Prince. James, her assistant, appeared with his usual stack of papers. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, and Mr. Chen from Singapore is waiting on line 1. Maria took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. She was still a businesswoman, still had responsibilities. The joy of her personal news would have to wait. The day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, but underneath it all was a current of pure happiness. Every time she touched her stomach, every time she thought of the little life growing inside her, her heart swelled with love and hope. By evening, she had secured another major donation for the foundation and closed a deal that would expand their reach into Southeast Asia. But none of it seemed as important as the miracle she carried. In her private office, Maria stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the Miami sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. One hand rested protectively over her stomach as she imagined the future, a nursery in soft yellows and greens, tiny clothes carefully folded, the sound of a baby's laughter filling their home. Her phone buzzed with a message from Shannon. "Working late, don't wait up." The familiar text brought a pang of sadness, but Maria refused to let it dim her joy. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow she would tell him about their miracle, and the distance between them would disappear. She left the office early, stopping at an exclusive baby boutique on her way home. It was too early to buy anything, but she couldn't resist looking. Her fingers trailed over soft onesies and tiny shoes, her mind filling with images of their child wearing each item. The penthouse was dark when she arrived home, but tonight the emptiness didn't bother her. She moved through the spaces they shared, seeing them with new eyes. The spare room down the hall from their bedroom, that would make a perfect nursery. The living room would need baby-proofing. The kitchen would soon be filled with bottles and baby food. In their master bathroom, Maria changed out of her business attire into a silk nightgown. She studied her reflection in the mirror, trying to see if there were any visible changes. Her hand caressed her flat stomach, knowing that soon it would swell with the evidence of their love. "Hello, little one," she whispered, feeling slightly foolish but too happy to care. "I'm your mommy, and tomorrow we're going to tell your daddy all about you. He's going to be so happy." She imagined Shannon's reaction again, his blue eyes lighting up with joy, his strong arms wrapping around her, his hands joining hers over their growing child. They would be a family, complete and whole and happy. Maria climbed into their massive bed, her mind filled with dreams of the future. She imagined Shannon reading bedtime stories, teaching their child to walk, being the wonderful father she knew he could be. The distance between them lately, the long hours at the office, the growing silence, all of it would disappear when he learned about their miracle. Sleep came easily, filled with dreams of happiness and hope. In her dreams, Shannon was beside her, his hand protectively covering her stomach, his love surrounding her like a warm blanket. What Maria didn't know was that across town, in a dimly lit office, Bella Dakota was weaving the final strands of her web of lies. She didn't know that her joyful news would soon turn to ashes in her mouth, that her dreams of family happiness were about to shatter like fine crystal. For now, she slept peacefully, one hand resting over the tiny life inside her, her heart full of love and hope for tomorrow. In her dreams, everything was perfect. In her dreams, their love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. Morning would come soon enough, bringing with it a storm that would tear her world apart. But for now, Maria Prince slept soundly, surrounded by dreams of the family she so desperately wanted, unaware that fate and Bella Dakota had other plans. The Miami night deepened around her, stars twinkling outside her window like distant promises. Inside her, a miracle grew stronger with each passing moment, a tiny heart beating in perfect rhythm with her own. Tomorrow would change everything, but not in the way she hoped. Chapter 5. The Shattering. The Miami sunset painted the sky blood red as Maria's car pulled into the private garage beneath their penthouse. Her heart was light despite her exhaustion, the joy of her secret making her feel as though she was floating. She'd spent the day planning the perfect way to tell Shannon about their miracle, stopping at his favorite bakery to order the croissants he loved for tomorrow's breakfast. The elevator ride to the penthouse seemed slower than usual, each floor bringing her closer to home. She touched her stomach gently, whispering silent promises to the tiny life growing within. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow, their family would begin to heal. The first sign that something was wrong was the darkness. Usually the automatic lights welcomed her home, but tonight the penthouse was shrouded in shadow, save for a single lamp in the living room, casting long, ominous shadows across the marble floors. "Shannon!" she called out, her voice echoing in the stillness. He sat in his leather armchair, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. Bella Dakota stood behind him like a dark sentinel, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder. The sight stopped Maria in her tracks, her instincts screaming that something was terribly wrong. "How was your appointment with Dr. Anderson?" Shannon's voice cut through the silence, cold and sharp as a blade. Maria's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, protecting the secret joy she carried. "I had an appointment with Dr. Chen, actually. James only—" "Don't," Shannon's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't stand there and lie to my face." He stood, crossing the room in 3 long strides to throw a manila envelope at her feet. Photos spilled out across the marble floor, her hugging James goodbye after a board meeting, their lunch meetings, text messages taken out of context. Each one twisted into something sinister, each innocent moment poisoned by suspicion. "Shannon, please, let me explain," Maria began, but he cut her off again. 3 years, he snarled, his handsome face contorted with rage. 3 years of trying to have a baby, and now suddenly you're spending all this time with an obstetrics specialist. Do you think I'm stupid, Maria? The irony of his accusation would have been laughable if it wasn't so devastating. Behind him, Bella's lips curved into a satisfied smile, and in that moment, Maria understood everything. The distance, the suspicion, the carefully orchestrated scenes. It had all been leading to this moment. The appointments were with Dr. Chen. Maria tried again, her voice trembling. James was only consulting because what? Shannon laughed bitterly. Because you needed a cover story. Because you needed someone to help you hide your affair. Affair? The word hit her like a physical blow. Shannon, how can you think? Think! His voice rose to a shout. I don't have to think, I have proof. He gestured wildly at the photos scattered across the floor. Every secret meeting, every private phone call, every lie you've told me. Maria's eyes locked with Bella's, and in that moment she saw the truth in the other woman's triumphant gaze. Every photo, every piece of evidence had been carefully crafted to destroy her marriage. I'm pregnant, Maria said quietly, the words she'd imagined sharing in joy now spoken in desperation. Shannon's laugh was ugly, devoid of any warmth. And I'm supposed to believe it's mine. After all this, he walked to his desk, pulled out a check, and threw it at her feet. Consider it severance for services rendered. Get out. Shannon, please. Tears streamed down her face as she reached for him. Get out! Each word was enunciated with cold fury. Before I call security. Maria stood frozen, her world crumbling around her. Then, with dignity she didn't know she possessed, she straightened her spine and looked directly at Bella. Congratulations, she said softly. You played your game well. But remember this moment, because one day you'll learn that what goes around comes around. She turned to Shannon, her heart breaking at the hatred in his eyes. And you'll remember this moment too. When you realize what you've thrown away, when you understand how completely you've been manipulated, remember that it was your choice to believe the worst about the woman who loved you best. Maria walked to the door, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown to the end of her marriage. At the threshold, she turned one last time, one hand protectively over her stomach. Our child will know the truth someday, she said quietly. About who you were, about what you did, about how easily you threw away your family for a lie. That will be your legacy, Shannon Prince. The door closed behind her with a quiet click that echoed like thunder in the silent penthouse. In the private elevator, Maria finally allowed her tears to fall freely. One hand pressed against her stomach, she made a silent vow to her unborn child. We don't need him, she whispered. We'll build our own empire, and we'll be stronger for having survived this. Through her tears, she caught her reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls. Even broken, she was beautiful. And more importantly, she was undefeated. Shannon might have believed Bella's lies, might have thrown away their marriage, but he couldn't take away her strength, her dignity, or her future. In the garage, Maria slid behind the wheel of her car, her mind already planning her next moves. She would need lawyers, would need to protect her secret business empire, would need to ensure her child's future was secure. But first, she needed to get away from Miami, away from the toxic web of lies that had destroyed her marriage. As she drove through the Miami night, her phone buzzed repeatedly. Shannon, probably coming to his senses, probably wanting to continue the fight. She ignored it. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to fight for. He had made his choice. The city lights blurred through her tears as she drove, but her spine remained straight, her head held high. She was Maria Prince. She had built an empire in secret, had survived years of disappointment and pain, had never let anything break her. This wouldn't break her either. In her rearview mirror, the Prince Industries building rose like a monument to everything she was leaving behind. But in her heart, a new strength was growing, fierce as a mother's love, powerful as a woman scorned, unstoppable as justice itself. "Your father may have rejected us," she whispered to her unborn child, "but I promise you this. We will rise from these ashes stronger than ever, and one day he'll realize exactly what he lost tonight." Behind her, Miami's lights twinkled like fallen stars, and ahead, the darkness of the highway stretched like an invitation to a new beginning. Maria Prince drove into that darkness with tears on her cheeks, but steel in her spine, carrying with her two precious things, her unborn child, and the unshakable knowledge that sometimes the best revenge is living well. In the penthouse she left behind, Shannon stood at the window, watching her car disappear into the night. Something like doubt flickered in his eyes, but Bella's arms slipped around his waist, her whispered poison drowning out the voice of his conscience. "You did the right thing," she murmured. "She never deserved you." What Shannon didn't know, what he wouldn't realize until it was far too late, was that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had thrown away a diamond for cubic zirconia, had destroyed his chance at true happiness for a carefully crafted lie. But that realization would come later, for now he stood in his tower of glass and steel, holding the wrong woman, believing the wrong truth, while the right one drove away into the night, carrying with her a secret that would change everything. The Miami night deepened around them all, around Maria as she drove toward her new future, around Shannon as he drowned his doubts in scotch and Bella's embrace, around Bella as she celebrated her victory. But nights, no matter how dark, always end, and when the dawn came, it would bring with it consequences none of them could have foreseen. Chapter 6. Rise of the Phoenix. New York City embraced Maria Prince with its characteristic indifference to personal tragedies. The city's towering skyscrapers and relentless pace matched her determination to rebuild herself from the ashes of her shattered marriage. 3 months after leaving Miami, she stood in her new office overlooking Central Park, one hand resting on her growing belly as she surveyed the empire she was building. The Dakota Foundation's New York headquarters occupied the top 5 floors of a prestigious Madison Avenue building, but that was just the public face of her operation. Behind the scenes, Maria had unleashed the full power of her business acumen, transforming her secret technology companies into a force that was rapidly reshaping the industry. Ms. Prince, her new assistant Sarah, appeared in the doorway. "The board is assembled for the strategy meeting, and Mr. Chen from Global Tech has called 3 times about the merger." Maria smiled, sensing the older woman's protective concern. Sarah had been a godsend these past months, managing her punishing schedule while ensuring she took care of herself and her unborn child. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes," Maria replied, adjusting her custom-made Chanel suit that elegantly accommodated her 6-month baby bump. "And Sarah, schedule a call with Mr. Chen for tomorrow morning. Let him sweat a little." The boardroom fell silent as she entered. These weren't the polite philanthropists of Miami. These were New York's elite power brokers, drawn by whispers of revolutionary technology and the chance to be part of something extraordinary. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maria began, her voice carrying the quiet authority she'd cultivated, "today we're not just discussing the future of technology, we're discussing how to reshape it." For the next 2 hours, she laid out her vision. The Dakota Foundation would continue its charitable work, but her tech companies, now consolidated under the banner of Phoenix Innovations, would push the boundaries of artificial intelligence and renewable energy. "Impressive presentation, Ms. Prince," James Morrison, a veteran venture capitalist, commented as the meeting concluded. "I admit, when I heard Shannon Prince's wife was behind this, I had my doubts, but you've proven them completely unfounded." Maria's smile didn't waver, though her hand tightened slightly on her tablet. Mr. Morrison, I haven't been Mrs. Shannon Prince for 3 months, and I was never just Shannon Prince's wife. Back in her office, Maria allowed herself a moment of weakness. She sank into her leather chair, both hands cradling her stomach as her son kicked vigorously. "You're going to be a fighter, aren't you?" she whispered, "just like your mama." The past 3 months had been a carefully orchestrated dance of legal maneuvers and business strategies. Her lawyers had handled the divorce with brutal efficiency, while her financial team had protected her secret business holdings from Shannon's attempts to claim them. She'd watched from New York as Miami's business world buzzed with speculation. Shannon had tried to spin the story his way, but Maria's dignity in the face of his accusations had won her unexpected allies. When Bella moved into the penthouse, barely a month after Maria's departure, even Shannon's most loyal supporters began to question his version of events. "Ms. Prince," Sarah's voice came through the intercom. "Your doctor's appointment is in an hour." Maria gathered her things, pushing aside thoughts of Miami and Shannon. She had more important things to focus on, like the strong, healthy boy growing inside her. Dr. Elizabeth Warner's office was a sanctuary of calm on Park Avenue. The renowned obstetrician had taken one look at Maria's file and understood exactly what she needed, not just medical care, but discretion and support. "Everything looks perfect, Doctor," Warner said, reviewing the ultrasound. "He's right on track for size, and his heart rate is strong. Have you thought about names?" "Alexander," Maria replied without hesitation. "Alexander James Prince, a strong name for a strong boy." The doctor's eyes softened with understanding. "He'll know his worth, Maria. You're making sure of that." The next few months passed in a blur of business deals and preparations. Maria threw herself into both with equal passion, building her empire while creating a warm nest for her son. The penthouse she'd bought on Central Park West slowly transformed from a showcase of modern design into a home, with one room specially prepared for its upcoming resident. The nursery was her sanctuary. Done in shades of cream and soft blue, it represented everything she was fighting for. She spent evenings in the antique rocking chair, one hand on her growing belly, telling her son stories about strength and perseverance, about rising from the ashes stronger than before. News from Miami reached her occasionally. Shannon and Bella had made their relationship public, appearing together at society events. Prince Industries' stock had taken a hit when several key investors pulled out, uncomfortable with the scandal. Maria noted it all with detached interest, focusing instead on her own expanding empire. The night Alexander decided to make his appearance was appropriately dramatic. A summer storm raged over Manhattan as Maria was finalizing a major acquisition via video conference. "Ms. Prince," Sarah interrupted urgently, "your water just broke." The next 12 hours were a blur of pain and determination. Maria refused all pain medication, channeling every contraction into strength. Outside her private hospital suite, the storm raged on, but inside, she remained focused and controlled. Alexander James Prince entered the world with a powerful cry, just as lightning split the sky. The moment Dr. Warner placed him in Maria's arms, the storm broke, and moonlight streamed through the windows. "Hello, my love," Maria whispered, counting his perfect fingers and toes. "I've been waiting for you." He was beautiful, a perfect blend of her and Shannon, with his father's blue eyes and her dark hair. Looking at him, Maria felt no bitterness, only fierce love and determination. This child would have everything, not just material wealth, but strength of character, understanding of his worth, and the unwavering support of a mother who would move heaven and earth for him. The news of Alexander's birth never reached Miami. Maria had made sure of that, protecting her son from the media circus that would have ensued. Let Shannon and Bella have their spotlight. She and Alexander would build their own legacy. In the weeks that followed, Maria proved that motherhood and empire building were not mutually exclusive. She nursed Alexander during conference calls, reviewed contracts while he napped on her chest, and built a network of support that allowed her to be both CEO and mother. Her new board members quickly learned to conduct meetings around Alexander's schedule. More than once, major deals were negotiated while the infant slept peacefully in his state-of-the-art nursery adjacent to her office. 6 months after Alexander's birth, Maria stood at her office window, watching the sun set over Central Park. Her son was growing stronger every day, and so was her business empire. Phoenix Innovations had just secured a groundbreaking patent that would revolutionize renewable energy. The Dakota Foundation had expanded its reach globally. "Your father thinks he won," she whispered to Alexander, who was contentedly nursing at her breast. "He doesn't know that losing him was the key to finding my true strength. And one day, my love, he'll realize exactly what he threw away." The New York skyline glittered like a promise of things to come. Maria Prince had entered the city broken but unbowed. Now she stood at the head of a growing empire with her precious son in her arms and steel in her spine. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, stronger and more magnificent than ever. And this was just the beginning. In Miami, Shannon Prince sat in his office, staring at newspaper headlines about Phoenix Innovations' latest breakthrough. Something about the company's meteoric rise nagged at him, but Bella's constant presence kept him from looking too closely. What he didn't know, what he wouldn't realize until it was far too late, was that his true legacy, his son, was growing stronger every day in a Central Park penthouse, loved fiercely by a mother who had transformed pain into power. The New York night deepened around Maria and Alexander, the city's lights twinkling like stars. In her arms, her son slept peacefully, unaware that he was heir to not one empire but two, one built on pride and deception, the other on strength and determination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that the best revenge was living well. But for now, Maria Prince held her sleeping son, surrounded by the empire she'd built from nothing, secure in the knowledge that sometimes what breaks you becomes the foundation of something far more beautiful than what was lost. Chapter 7. Truth's Shadow. The Miami dawn broke over Prince Industries' headquarters, finding Shannon Prince already at his desk. Sleep had become elusive lately, his nights haunted by doubts he couldn't quite name. The morning's Financial Times lay open before him, its headline catching his eye: "Phoenix Innovations revolutionizes green energy market." Something about the company's meteoric rise over the past 2 years nagged at him. Their technology was brilliant, their market strategy flawless, their execution perfect. It reminded him of someone, though he couldn't quite place who. "Morning, darling." Bella's voice cut through his thoughts as she entered his office. She wore a fitted red dress that would have stopped traffic, but lately even her presence felt somehow hollow. "You're here early." Shannon barely looked up from the article. "Have our analysts looked into Phoenix Innovations? Their new patent could affect our energy division." "I'll have someone review it," Bella replied dismissively, moving behind his chair to massage his shoulders. "But surely there are more interesting things to discuss, like our engagement party next weekend." The massive diamond on her left hand caught the morning light, throwing rainbow reflections across his desk. Shannon had proposed 3 months ago, more out of expectation than desire. The ring had cost a fortune, but somehow it looked gaudy compared to the simple band he'd given Maria years ago. Maria. The name still brought a mixture of anger and something else, something that felt increasingly like doubt. "I need to focus on this," he said, shrugging off Bella's touch. "Phoenix came out of nowhere, and now they're outperforming us in multiple markets." Bella's perfectly manicured nails dug slightly into his shoulders. You're working too hard, darling. Why don't we take the yacht out this weekend, just the two of us? But Shannon was already pulling up more articles about Phoenix Innovations. Their CEO was notably private. No photos, no interviews, just brilliant business moves and revolutionary patents. Their charitable arm, some reformed version of an old foundation, was making waves in international development. His phone buzzed with a message from his private investigator. Found something interesting about Phoenix? Meeting in 20? I have a meeting, Shannon announced, standing abruptly. Don't wait for me for lunch. Bella's eyes narrowed slightly, but her smile remained perfect. Of course, darling. Don't work too hard. The drive to his investigator's office gave Shannon time to think. The past 2 years had felt like watching his empire slowly crumble. Key investors had pulled out after his divorce, uncomfortable with the scandal. Talented employees had mysteriously departed for other companies. And now this upstart firm was eating into his market share. Mike Reynolds's office was deliberately nondescript, hidden in a modest building far from Miami's financial district. The investigator had served Shannon well over the years, digging up dirt on competitors and verifying investments. What did you find? Shannon demanded as soon as the door closed behind him. Mike gestured to a stack of files on his desk. You might want to sit down for this, Mr. Prince. The first file contained corporate registration documents showing a complex web of holdings and shell companies. Phoenix Innovations isn't as new as everyone thinks, Mike explained. The groundwork was laid years ago, all perfectly legal but carefully hidden. The kind of strategic planning that reminds me of someone. Shannon's throat felt dry. Who? Mike pulled out a glossy business magazine. This might answer your question. The article was about a charity gala in New York. The photo showed Manhattan's elite gathered around a striking woman in a blue gown, but Shannon barely noticed her. His eyes were fixed on the child in her arms, a boy about 2 years old, with familiar blue eyes and an even more familiar smile. That's... Shannon's voice trailed off as the implications hit him. Maria Prince, Mike confirmed, though she dropped your name after the divorce, and that appears to be her son. The timing would put his conception right around when I threw her out, Shannon finished, his voice hollow. He stared at the photo, taking in details he'd missed at first. The boy had his eyes, his smile, but Maria's dark hair and elegant features. There was no doubt. This was his son. There's more, Mike continued, pulling out more files. I did some digging into those photos from 2 years ago, the ones of Mrs. Prince, Maria, and Dr. Anderson. They were altered, professionally done, but definitely manipulated. Shannon's head snapped up. What? Someone went to a lot of trouble to make innocent meetings look suspicious. And those text messages, careful editing of real exchanges. It was a setup, Mr. Prince. A very careful, very professional setup. The room seemed to spin as Shannon's world tilted on its axis. Who would... But he knew. Deep down, he'd always known. The subtle inconsistencies in Bella's stories, the convenient timing of her discoveries, the way she'd been there to pick up the pieces when his marriage fell apart. There's something else you should see, Mike said quietly, sliding over another file. About your current fiancé's past. She's done this before. The file detailed Bella's history, previous positions at other companies, relationships with married executives, carefully orchestrated scandals. Each time, she'd emerged more powerful, more wealthy, while leaving destruction in her wake. I'll need time to verify everything, Mike added, but the pattern is clear. The photos were doctored by a specialist in Chicago. I'm still tracing the money, but I'm betting it leads back to... Bella, Shannon finished, his voice like ice. It all leads back to Bella. He stood abruptly, gathering the files with trembling hands. The photo of Maria and his son, seemed to burn through the manila envelope. Find out everything. he ordered. "Every detail, every connection, every lie. I want it all." Back in his car, Shannon sat motionless, staring at the photo of his son. The boy was beautiful, perfect, a prince in every sense of the word, and he had missed everything. The pregnancy, the birth, the first steps, the first words. His phone buzzed with a message from Bella. "Don't forget dinner with the wedding planner tonight, darling." The endearment, once seductive, now tasted like poison. Shannon started his car, but instead of returning to the office, he drove to the beach where he and Maria had first met. The place where, years ago, he'd fallen in love with a woman whose strength he'd never fully appreciated until he'd lost her. Waves crashed against the shore as reality crashed over him. He had destroyed his marriage for a lie, had thrown away his chance to be a father, had lost the one woman who had loved him for himself, not his power or money. The Miami sun beat down mercilessly as Shannon Prince finally faced the truth. He had been played for a fool, and the price of his foolishness was higher than he could have imagined. His phone buzzed again. Bella, wanting to know where he was. He ignored it, staring instead at the photo of his son. The boy's smile, so like his own, seemed to mock him with all that he had lost. "I'll make this right," he whispered to the photo, though he had no idea how. "How do you apologize for 2 years of absence? How do you make up for believing the worst about the mother of your child?" The answer eluded him as he sat there, the weight of his mistakes pressing down like lead. In New York, his son was growing up without him. In Miami, his company was being outmaneuvered by the very woman he had underestimated. And by his side, the architect of his destruction planned their wedding with meticulous care. Evening found him still at the beach, watching the sun set over the water. His phone had fallen silent after dozens of ignored calls from Bella. In his mind, memories played on repeat. Maria's face when he'd accused her, the tears in her eyes, the dignity with which she'd walked away. "I'll make this right," he promised again, this time to the setting sun. But first, he had a snake to deal with. The Miami night deepened around him as Shannon Prince finally stood, his decision made. He would uncover every lie, expose every manipulation, and then he would face the consequences of his choices. Face Maria, if she would see him. Meet his son, if she would allow it. But first, Bella Dakota would learn that she had underestimated both Prince spouses. The game she had started was about to end, and the price of her deception would be higher than she could imagine. Chapter 8. Castle of Cards. The morning sun had barely touched the Miami skyline when Shannon Prince strode into Prince Industries, armed with a briefcase full of evidence and 2 years of accumulated rage. For the past week, he had worked in secret with Mike Reynolds, unraveling every thread of Bella's deception. Today, her castle of cards would fall. His first stop was the office of Claire Martinez, Bella's executive assistant. The young woman looked up nervously as he entered, clearly sensing something was wrong. "Mr. Prince," she began, but Shannon cut her off. "It's time to tell the truth, Claire. All of it." For a moment she hesitated, fear warring with what looked like relief on her face. Then, reaching into her desk drawer, she pulled out a thick folder. "I've kept copies of everything," she said quietly. "Every doctored photo, every edited email, every fake meeting she created. I couldn't live with myself anymore, watching her destroy people's lives." Shannon's hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder. There it all was, documented proof of every lie Bella had used to destroy his marriage. Photos of Maria's innocent meetings with Dr. Anderson, showing the before and after of Bella's manipulations. Text messages in their original form, revealing how carefully they had been edited to create suspicion. "Why now?" he asked, looking at Claire. She met his eyes steadily. "Because she's planning to do it again. Once she marries you and secures her position, she'll start manipulating evidence to force you out of the company." just like she did at Sterling Corp 3 years ago. The revelation hit Shannon like a physical blow. Mike's investigation had hinted at Bella's past, but hearing it confirmed by someone who had witnessed her methods firsthand made it real. "Tell me everything," he commanded, sitting down across from Claire's desk. For the next hour, she laid out Bella's entire scheme, how she had spent months gathering information about Shannon and Maria's marriage, looking for weak points to exploit. How she had hired specialists to alter photos and create false evidence. How she had timed each revelation perfectly to cause maximum damage. "The pregnancy," Shannon said suddenly, his voice hoarse. "Did she know?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she intercepted Dr. Chen's congratulatory flowers before they were delivered. "That's why she chose that exact moment to show you the fake photos. She knew the truth would make her lies fall apart." Rage, pure and hot, coursed through Shannon's veins. He had missed his child's entire life because of this woman's manipulations, had believed the worst about Maria, the one person who had loved him truly, because he had been too proud, too arrogant to see through the lies. His phone buzzed. Bella, asking about wedding venue options. The sight of her name made him physically ill. "Mr. Prince?" Claire's voice was gentle. "There's something else you should know. The night Mrs. Prince left." Bella was already having the penthouse redecorated. She had ordered new furniture weeks before. The final piece clicked into place. Every move, every moment had been choreographed in Bella's grand performance. And he, successful businessman Shannon Prince, had been nothing but a puppet dancing to her tune. "Thank you, Claire," he said, standing. "You'll have full immunity from any fallout. In fact, expect a significant bonus for your honesty." He took the elevator to his office, using the time to compose himself. Bella would be arriving soon for their morning meeting. It would be their last. The office was quiet when he entered, Miami's morning light streaming through the windows. He sat at his desk, spreading out the evidence of Bella's deception like a hand of cards. Then he pressed the intercom. "Send in Ms. Dakota." She entered like she owned the place, wearing a crimson dress that once would have made his breath catch. Now he saw only the predator beneath the beautiful facade. "Good morning, darling," she purred, moving to kiss him. Shannon held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. "Sit down, Bella. We need to talk." Something flickered in her eyes, awareness, perhaps, that something was wrong, but her smile remained perfect as she took a seat. "About the wedding. I've been thinking we should move it up. No need to wait when we're so sure about—" "How long did it take?" Shannon interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. "To plan it all? To set up every piece of your little game?" The smile froze on her face. "What are you talking about?" In answer, Shannon began laying out photos on his desk. The originals and Bella's doctored versions side by side. Text messages showing her careful editing. Bank transfers to the specialists she had hired. "Quite an investment," he continued conversationally. "Hiring experts to alter photos, paying people to spread rumors, orchestrating every detail. Tell me, was it worth it?" Bella's mask cracked for just a moment before she recovered. "Shannon, darling, I don't know what you think you've found, but save it." His voice cracked like a whip. "Claire gave me everything, every document, every manipulation, every lie. It's over, Bella." She stared at him for a long moment before letting out a laugh that held no humor. "You were so easy to manipulate," she said, dropping all pretense. "So eager to believe the worst about the woman who loved you best. You deserved to lose her." Shannon's hands clenched into fists, but he kept his voice steady. "You cost me my marriage, my child, 2 years of my son's life that I can never get back." "Please," Bella scoffed, standing to pace the office. "Your marriage was already weak. I just exploited the cracks that were already there. Your pride, your arrogance, your inability to see Maria as an equal, those were all you, darling. Get out." The words were quiet, but carried the weight of steel. "Security is waiting to escort you from the building. Your personal items will be shipped to whatever address you provide." Bella's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake." "No," Shannon replied, standing to his full height. "I made a mistake 2 years ago when I believed your lies, when I threw away the best thing in my life for a cheap imitation. That stops today." "You'll regret this," she hissed, all pretense of sophistication gone. "I'll destroy you, just like I destroyed your precious marriage." Shannon smiled, but it held no warmth. "Try it. Every news outlet in Miami already has copies of what you did. Every board member has seen the evidence. You're finished, Bella, not just here, but everywhere." She took a step toward him, fury distorting her beautiful features. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can. And I have. Now get out before I have security drag you out." For a moment she stood frozen, calculation visible in her eyes. Then, gathering what remained of her dignity, she turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "She won't take you back, you know. Maria's built her own empire now. She doesn't need you anymore." "I know," Shannon replied quietly, "but I still need to try. I need to make this right, even if she never forgives me." After she left, Shannon sat heavily in his chair, the weight of the past 2 years pressing down on him. On his desk, the evidence of Bella's manipulation seemed to mock him with its thoroughness. How had he been so blind? His phone buzzed with a message from Mike Reynolds. "She's on her way to the airport. Want me to track her?" "No," Shannon replied. "Let her go. We have bigger things to focus on." He pulled out the photo of his son that he now carried everywhere. Alexander James Prince, the name he had learned from Mike's investigation. The boy had his eyes, his smile, but Maria's strength shone through in every photograph. "I'll make this right," he promised the photo. "Somehow, I'll make this right." The Miami sun climbed higher in the sky as Shannon Prince began the long process of rebuilding what his pride and Bella's lies had destroyed. His empire might have been built on glass, but his redemption would be built on truth, humility, and the desperate hope that somewhere in New York, Maria would give him a chance to explain. The day stretched ahead, filled with damage control and press statements. But Shannon barely noticed. His mind was already in New York, already planning how to approach Maria, how to meet his son, how to begin making amends for 2 years of unforgivable absence. Bella Dakota might have orchestrated his fall, but in doing so, she had inadvertently given him something precious. The chance to rebuild himself into someone worthy of the family he had lost. Chapter 9. Crisis Point. The New York winter had painted the city in shades of grey, when Maria's world tilted on its axis for the second time in her life. This time, it wasn't betrayal that shook her foundations, but something far more terrifying, Alexander's small body burning with fever in a hospital bed at Mount Sinai. "Mrs. Prince," Dr. Sarah Cohen's voice was gentle but urgent. "We need to discuss Alexander's condition." Maria stood at her son's bedside, one hand stroking his dark hair as he slept fitfully. At 2 years old, he was usually a bundle of energy and laughter. Now he lay unnaturally still, his normally rosy cheeks pale except for the spots of fever. "The infection is aggressive," Dr. Cohen continued, "and he's not responding to standard treatments. We need to start him on specialized medications, but first," she hesitated, "we need to do a complete blood transfusion." Maria's heart stuttered. "What's wrong with his blood?" "Nothing inherently wrong, but the infection has caused complications. He needs fresh blood, and not just any blood. He has a rare type. We need a perfect match." Maria already knew what was coming. She had the same blood type as Shannon. It had been a joke between them once, that they were literally compatible in every way, but Alexander had inherited his father's rare subtype. How long do we have? She asked, her voice steady despite the trembling in her heart. Hours, not days. We need to find a match quickly. Maria closed her eyes. Years of carefully maintained distance from Shannon crumbling in the face of maternal fear. She couldn't let pride stand in the way of her son's life. I know someone who matches, she said quietly. His father. Dr. Cohen nodded, understanding. Make the call. I'll have everything ready. Alone with her sleeping son, Maria pulled out her phone. She had kept Shannon's number blocked for 2 years, had returned every letter unopened, had built walls around her heart to protect herself from ever being hurt by him again. Now, watching Alexander's labored breathing, none of that mattered. The phone rang 3 times before his voice, achingly familiar, answered. Maria? She didn't waste time on greetings. Alexander is sick. He needs a blood transfusion. Your blood type. There was a moment of silence, then... Where? Mount Sinai in New York. He needs it within hours. I'm on my way. My pilot is already filing a flight plan. Maria ended the call without another word, returning to her vigil by Alexander's bed. Their son had Shannon's eyes, his smile, his stubborn determination. She had protected him from Shannon's rejection for 2 years, but now she had no choice but to let that wall crumble. The hours crawled by like years. Alexander's fever continued to rise despite the doctor's best efforts. Maria read him stories, sang soft lullabies, anything to keep him comfortable while they waited. At midnight, a nurse appeared in the doorway. Mr. Prince has arrived. Maria steeled herself, but nothing could have prepared her for the sight of Shannon rushing into the room, his normally impeccable appearance disheveled from travel. He stopped short at the sight of their son, all color draining from his face. Alexander, he breathed, taking a step forward before catching himself, looking to Maria for permission. She nodded slightly, moving aside to let him approach the bed. Shannon moved like a man in a dream, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch Alexander's small fingers. He has my eyes, Shannon whispered. And your smile, Maria replied softly, when he's not sick. Their eyes met over their son's bed, 2 years of pain and regret hanging between them. But before either could speak, Dr. Cohen entered. Mr. Prince, we need to start the transfusion immediately. The next hour was a blur of medical procedures. Shannon lay in a bed next to Alexander's, his blood flowing through tubes to save the son he had never known. Maria sat between them, one hand on Alexander's forehead, unable to stop herself from glancing at Shannon. He never took his eyes off Alexander, drinking in every detail of the child he had missed. The shape of his nose, the curve of his cheeks, the way his dark lashes lay against his fever-flushed skin. I'm sorry, Shannon said suddenly, his voice rough with emotion. God, Maria, I'm so sorry. I was such a fool. Not now, she cut him off. We focus on Alexander. Nothing else matters. But as the night wore on and Alexander's fever finally began to break, the words hung between them like ghosts. Shannon told her everything, about discovering Bella's manipulation, about the evidence, about his desperate attempts to make things right. I know it doesn't change anything, he said quietly as dawn began to paint the sky pink. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but please don't keep him from me. Let me try to be the father he deserves. Maria looked at their son, his color improving with each hour, his breathing easier. We'll see, she said finally. He comes first. Always. Of course, Shannon agreed quickly. Whatever you decide, whatever conditions you set, I'll accept them. I just want a chance. Alexander stirred then, his eyes fluttering open. For the first time in his life, he looked up and saw his father's face. Hello, little man, Shannon said softly, his voice choked with emotion. Alexander studied him with serious blue eyes, his eyes, before asking in a weak voice, Are you my daddy? The question hit Shannon like a physical blow. "Yes," he managed. "Yes, I'm your daddy." "Mommy showed me pictures," Alexander said, his small hand reaching out. "She said you were busy." Shannon took his son's hand, tears falling freely now. "I was wrong," he said, "so wrong, but I'm here now if you'll let me stay." Alexander's eyes were already dropping closed again, exhausted from the illness and treatment. But his small fingers curled around Shannon's larger ones, holding on even as he drifted back to sleep. Maria watched the interaction with a mixture of emotions she couldn't quite name. Seeing them together, their matching eyes, their identical ways of furrowing their brows, made her heart ache with what might have been. "He's amazing," Shannon whispered, still holding Alexander's hand. "You've done such an incredible job with him, Maria. He's perfect." "He is," she agreed. "And he's happy, Shannon. Remember that before you make any promises you can't keep. He's happy and whole and loved. Don't come into his life unless you're absolutely sure you can stay." Shannon met her eyes, and for the first time in years, she saw the man she had fallen in love with, not the arrogant CEO, but the passionate, caring man she had married. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said firmly. "Whatever it takes, whatever you need me to prove, I'll do it. I've missed too much already. I can't miss any more." The New York sunrise painted the hospital room in shades of gold as a new day began. Alexander slept peacefully between his parents, his small hand still holding his father's, his other hand clasped in his mother's. Nothing was resolved, nothing was forgiven, but something had shifted. In the face of their son's need, walls had crumbled, if only slightly. The future was uncertain, but for now, in this moment, they were together. A family in the most basic, primal sense. Maria watched Shannon watching their son, saw the love and regret warring in his eyes, and felt her carefully constructed defenses waver. Not enough to forget, not enough to forgive, but enough to consider the possibility that sometimes people could change. The morning light grew stronger as their son's fever finally broke completely. Promise of a new day, bringing with it the possibility of new beginnings. Nothing would be easy, nothing would be quick, but for Alexander's sake, they would try to find a way forward. Sometimes, Maria reflected, the greatest acts of love came not in grand gestures or passionate declarations, but in the quiet moments of choosing to try again, of putting aside pride and pain for something greater than ourselves. As Alexander slept on, healing and whole, his parents sat in silence, watching the sun rise on what might be the beginning of a new chapter in their complicated story. Chapter 10. Price of Redemption. 2 weeks after Alexander's recovery, Maria sat in her Central Park West penthouse office, watching the spring rain pattern the windows. Her son was fully recovered, playing with his nanny in the next room, his laughter a reminder of how close she'd come to losing him. The manila envelope on her desk seemed to carry the weight of years. Inside were her lawyer's carefully crafted conditions for Shannon's involvement in their lives. She had spent days refining them, ensuring every detail was precise, every requirement clear. Her intercom buzzed. "Mr. Prince is here, Ms. Prince." Maria took a deep breath, straightening her spine. "Send him in." Shannon entered looking both powerful and uncertain. His custom suit couldn't hide the nervous energy that radiated from him, the desperate hope in his eyes as he heard Alexander's laughter from the next room. "He's feeling better?" Shannon asked, remaining standing until Maria gestured to a chair. "Much better. The doctors say there won't be any lasting effects." They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of rain and distant childish giggles filling the space between them. Shannon's eyes kept drifting to the door, clearly wanting to see his son. "We need to discuss terms," Maria said finally, opening the envelope. "If you want to be part of Alexander's life, there are conditions." Shannon leaned forward. "Anything, whatever you require." "First, Maria began, her voice steady. You sign over 30% of Prince Industries to Alexander's trust. Not to me, not to the foundation, but to a trust that will secure his future. She expected argument, negotiation, but Shannon simply nodded. Done. I'll have the papers drawn up today. Second, she continued, you attend therapy. Both individual sessions and eventually joint sessions with me. We need to address what happened, how it happened, and ensure it can never happen again. Of course, Shannon agreed quickly. I've already started seeing someone, actually. After everything with Bella, I needed to understand how I could have been so blind. Maria's hands tightened slightly on the papers at the mention of Bella's name, but she continued. Third, you publicly acknowledge everything, the manipulation, your mistakes, and most importantly, that I built my empire without your help or influence. No more Shannon Prince's ex-wife narratives. For the first time, Shannon smiled slightly. Maria, you've outmaneuvered me in 3 different markets this year alone. No one who's paying attention thinks of you as my ex-wife anymore. They think of me as your mistake. The attempt at humor fell flat, but Maria appreciated the acknowledgement. There's more. You'll start with supervised visits with Alexander. 2 hours, twice a week here in the penthouse. If that goes well, we can discuss expanding the time and perhaps some outings. When can I start? The eagerness in his voice was painful to hear. Today, if you agree to the terms. He's been asking about you since the hospital. Shannon's eyes filled with tears. He quickly blinked away. He has. You made quite an impression, Maria said softly. He keeps calling you my daddy to anyone who will listen. That's why we need to be absolutely clear about this, Shannon. If you start this, if you become part of his life, there's no walking away, no changing your mind, no letting business or pride or other people come between you and your son. Never again, Shannon vowed, his voice rough with emotion. I've missed too much already. His first steps, his first words. His first day at daycare, Maria continued, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. His first Christmas, his first birthday. All those moments you can never get back. Shannon's face crumpled with guilt. I know. God, Maria, I know. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. You can't make up for it, she said firmly. Those moments are gone. What you can do is be here for the moments to come, if you're sure you're ready for that commitment. I am, he said without hesitation. Whatever it takes, whatever you need me to prove, I'll do it. Just, please let me try to be his father. Maria studied him for a long moment. The man sitting before her was different from the proud, arrogant CEO who had thrown her out 2 years ago. There was humility in his eyes now, and a desperate kind of hope that spoke of genuine change. Very well, she said finally. Sign these papers, and then you can see him. Shannon's hands trembled slightly as he took the documents, reading each page carefully before signing. When he finished, he looked up at Maria with tears in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered, for not keeping him from me, even after everything I did. I'm doing this for Alexander, Maria clarified. He deserves to know his father, to make his own judgments, but Shannon, her voice hardened, if you ever hurt him, if you ever make him feel unwanted or unloved, there won't be a third chance, understand? Completely, he nodded. I won't let either of you down again. Maria stood, moving to the door that led to the playroom. Alexander, she called, there's someone here to see you. The boy came running, stopping short when he saw Shannon. His blue eyes, so like his father's, lit up with recognition. Daddy, he exclaimed, launching himself forward. Shannon caught him, lifting him into a tight embrace. Hey, buddy, he managed through his tears. I've missed you. Maria watched them together, her heart a complex tangle of emotions. They looked so alike, moved so similarly. Alexander chatted excitedly about his toys, his friends at daycare, the fish tank in his room, while Shannon listened with rapt attention, drinking in every word. "Want to see my trucks?" Alexander asked, tugging Shannon's hand. Shannon looked to Maria for permission. At her nod, he allowed himself to be led into the playroom, his son's happy voice explaining each toy in detail. Standing in the doorway, Maria watched their interaction. Shannon sat on the floor, his expensive suit forgotten as he pushed toy trucks around with their son. Alexander climbed into his lap, showing him picture books and stuffed animals, completely comfortable with this man he barely knew. The scene was everything she had once dreamed of, back when she'd first learned she was pregnant. But now it came with complications, with history, with pain that couldn't simply be erased. Yet watching them together, seeing Shannon's genuine joy in every moment with their son, Maria felt something in her heart shift slightly. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The rain continued outside, but in the warm playroom, father and son built towers with blocks, raced cars across the carpet, and began the slow process of knowing each other. It wasn't perfect, wasn't the family Maria had once imagined, but it was something new, something that might, with time and care, grow into something beautiful. For now, that would have to be enough. Chapter 11. Birthday Wishes. The Central Park Zoo had been transformed into a magical wonderland for Alexander's third birthday. Maria had spared no expense, turning the private event space into a safari adventure complete with professional animal handlers, interactive exhibits, and a cake that looked like a sleeping lion. Morning sunlight filtered through the trees as she supervised the final preparations. For the past 6 months, Shannon had kept every promise, attended every therapy session, and proven himself dedicated to rebuilding his relationship with Alexander. Still, this would be their first public event together as a family, and Maria's nerves were on edge. "Mommy, when are my friends coming?" Alexander bounced excitedly beside her, looking adorable in his explorer outfit complete with a tiny pith helmet. "Soon, sweetheart," she smiled, adjusting his hat. "Are you excited to show Daddy all the animals?" "Yes," he beamed. "Daddy said he's never seen a real penguin before." The past months had been a careful dance of supervised visits, gradually expanding into longer periods of time. Shannon had thrown himself into fatherhood with the same intensity he once reserved for business deals, learning everything about Alexander's routines, preferences, and personality. "Ms. Prince," an event coordinator approached. "The guests will be arriving in 30 minutes. Maria nodded, checking her reflection in a nearby window. She had chosen a sage-green sundress that complemented her olive skin, her dark hair falling in soft waves. The outfit was casual enough for a children's party, but elegant enough for the high-profile guests who would be attending. The sound of familiar footsteps made her turn. Shannon approached carrying an enormous wrapped gift, looking perfectly at ease in designer jeans and a light blue button-down that matched his eyes, and Alexander's. "Daddy!" Alexander launched himself at his father, who somehow managed to set down the gift in time to catch him. "Happy birthday, buddy!" Shannon swept him up in a hug. "Are you ready for your big party?" Maria watched their interaction, noting how natural it had become. Shannon had learned all of Alexander's little quirks, how he liked to be held, how he needed his stuffed elephant when he was tired, how he preferred his sandwiches cut into triangles. "I should check on the cake," Maria said, needing a moment away from the domestic scene that pulled at her heart. But as she turned to leave, Shannon called out softly, "Maria, you look beautiful." The compliment, sincere and unexpected, brought a flush to her cheeks as she walked away. In the past months, Shannon had been careful to keep their interactions focused solely on Alexander, respecting the boundaries she had set. But sometimes, like now, moments of their old connection would spark between them. The party began perfectly. Children ran excitedly between animal exhibits while their parents, New York's elite, mingled and discussed business. Maria moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting compliments on the party's success. She couldn't help but notice how many of the guests, particularly the women, watched Shannon with their children. He was in his element, helping little ones feed the gentle animals, lifting them up to see better, his genuine joy in the activities evident. "He's changed," commented Sarah, Maria's assistant and friend, following her gaze. "The therapy seems to be working." Maria nodded non-committally, but she had noticed the changes too. The arrogance had been replaced by humility, the controlling nature by careful consideration of others' feelings. Weekly therapy sessions, both individual and joint, had forced them to confront the patterns that had led to their marriage's destruction. The highlight of the morning came when the zookeepers brought out special animal guests for Alexander to meet: a baby penguin, a friendly sloth, and a tiny monkey that took an immediate liking to him. "Look, Daddy!" Alexander called excitedly as the monkey perched on his shoulder. "He likes me!" Shannon's face lit up with pure joy as he snapped photos. "He sure does, buddy! Just like all your friends." The moment for the cake arrived, and Maria's heart squeezed as she watched Shannon help Alexander climb onto a chair to reach it. The gathered crowd began singing "Happy Birthday," and in that moment, with the sunlight dappling through the trees and their son's face glowing with happiness, Maria could almost forget the pain of the past 2 years. "Make a wish, sweetheart," she encouraged as Alexander stared at the candles with serious concentration. He closed his eyes tight, thinking hard, then declared loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I wish Daddy would live with us forever, and for Mommy to stop being sad when she looks at him." The silence that fell over the crowd was deafening. Maria felt her cheeks burn as all eyes turned to her and Shannon. Their son, oblivious to the tension he had created, happily blew out his candles. Shannon moved first, kneeling beside Alexander's chair. "Buddy, some wishes are complicated," he began gently. But Alexander, with a child's simple wisdom, shook his head. "No, they're not. You love us, and we love you. Why can't you stay?" Maria's eyes met Shannon's over their son's head, seeing in them the same storm of emotions she felt. Love for their child, regret for the past, uncertainty about the future. "Alexander," Maria said softly, moving to his other side, "sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out, but your daddy loves you very much, and he's not going anywhere, right?" "Right," Shannon agreed firmly, though his eyes never left Maria's face. "I'll always be here for you, buddy, no matter what." The party continued, but something had shifted. As they watched Alexander play with his friends, Shannon and Maria found themselves standing closer together than usual, both lost in thought. "He's right, you know," Shannon said quietly, so only she could hear. "About me loving you both, I never stopped, even when I was being the world's biggest fool." Maria's heart stuttered, but she kept her voice steady. "Shannon, I know," he interrupted gently. "I know I haven't earned forgiveness yet. I know it might never happen. But Maria, these past months with Alexander, seeing you with him, watching the amazing person you've become, I fall more in love with you both every day." Before she could respond, Alexander ran up to them, Monkey still perched on his shoulder, demanding they both come see something amazing. The moment passed, but Shannon's words lingered in Maria's mind. As the party wound down and tired children were collected by their parents, Alexander fell asleep in Shannon's arms, his new stuffed monkey clutched tight. The sight of them together, Shannon cradling their sleeping son with such tender care, made Maria's carefully constructed walls waver. "I'll help you get him home," Shannon offered softly. Maria nodded, and together they gathered Alexander's gifts and made their way to her waiting car. The drive to the penthouse was quiet, filled with the sound of their son's peaceful breathing and the weight of unspoken words. In Alexander's room, they worked together with practiced ease to change him into pajamas without waking him. As they tucked him in, his small hand caught both of theirs, holding on even in sleep. "Stay," Maria whispered, surprising herself. "Just stay for dinner. We should talk." Shannon's eyes filled with hope, but he kept his voice carefully neutral. "I'd like that." They stood for a moment longer, watching their son sleep, their hands still joined by his grip. The afternoon sun painted the nursery in soft gold, and in that light, Maria could almost see the future Alexander had wished for. A future where forgiveness was possible, where love could be stronger than pride, where a family broken by lies could be rebuilt on truth. It wouldn't be easy. There were still conversations to be had, trust to be rebuilt, wounds to be healed. But watching Shannon press a gentle kiss to their son's forehead, Maria felt something in her heart shift and settle. Sometimes, she realized, the greatest gifts come not in the form of wishes granted, but in the courage to try again, to love again, to believe again in the possibility of happiness. The New York afternoon deepened around them as they left their sleeping son to his dreams, ready at last to begin writing the next chapter of their story. Chapter 12. Love's Victory. The sun rose over Central Park, painting the New York skyline in shades of gold and promise. In her penthouse bedroom, Maria stood before her full-length mirror, adjusting the emerald silk dress that had become her armor for important moments. Today would change everything. Again. It had been 3 months since Alexander's birthday party, 3 months of careful conversations over quiet dinners after their son was asleep, 3 months of rebuilding trust, of learning each other again, of discovering that sometimes love could be stronger the second time around. "Mommy!" Alexander's excited voice preceded him as he burst into her room. "Is it time for my party yet?" Maria scooped him up, pressing a kiss to his forehead. At 3 years and 3 months, he was growing so fast, looking more like Shannon every day. "Soon, sweetheart. Are you excited to show Daddy your new treehouse?" "Yes," and I made him a special card all by myself. The card in question was currently hidden in Alexander's room, covered in glitter, and featuring wobbly drawings of their family, all 3 of them together, just as he always dreamed. The doorbell rang, and Maria's heart skipped. Shannon was early as usual these days. He had thrown himself into fatherhood with a dedication that sometimes took her breath away, never missing a moment he could share with their son. "Daddy!" Alexander scrambled down and ran to the door. Maria followed more slowly, taking a deep breath to steady herself. These past months had changed everything. Shannon had kept every promise, exceeded every expectation. The therapy sessions had forced them both to confront their past mistakes. His pride and susceptibility to manipulation, her tendency to hide her true self. Shannon stood in the doorway, looking devastatingly handsome in a navy suit that brought out his eyes. He swept Alexander up into a hug before his gaze found Maria, softening with an emotion she wasn't quite ready to name. "You look beautiful," he said softly, a phrase that had become part of their daily interactions. "Come see my treehouse," Alexander demanded, pulling his father toward the terrace where an elaborate playhouse had been built. Maria watched them go, her heart full of conflicting emotions. The past 3 months had shown her a different Shannon, humble, dedicated, completely focused on being the father and man he should have been all along. The terrace had been transformed for Alexander's half-birthday celebration. It wasn't as elaborate as his zoo party, but it was more important. Today, they would tell their son that his birthday wish was coming true, sort of. Shannon had bought the penthouse next door, and construction would soon begin to combine the 2 spaces. Not moving in together exactly, but creating a connected space where they could all be close while still maintaining the boundaries Maria needed. The small gathering of close friends and family began arriving. These weren't the society elite from the zoo party, but the people who had supported Maria through everything. Sarah, Dr. Cohen, the trusted few who had become her New York family. As Alexander proudly showed off his treehouse to his friends, Shannon moved to stand beside Maria at the terrace railing. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. "We can wait if you need more time." Maria turned to look at him, really look at him. The man beside her was both familiar and new, the same handsome features she had fallen in love with, but now marked by humility and wisdom earned through pain. "I'm sure," she replied. "Alexander needs this. And maybe we do too." Shannon's hand found hers, squeezing gently. They had learned to be careful with touches, with words, rebuilding their relationship brick by careful brick. "Have you heard from Mike?" Maria asked, referring to Shannon's investigator who had been tracking Bella's movements. "Yes, actually." A grim satisfaction crossed his face. She tried her same scheme at Sterling Corp in Los Angeles. Unfortunately for her, the CEO's wife was an ex-FBI agent. Bella's facing fraud charges. Maria felt no joy at the news, only a quiet sense of justice served. "And the company?" "Prince Industries is stronger than ever, thanks in part to our partnership with Phoenix Innovations." He smiled at her. "You've outmaneuvered me thoroughly, Mrs. Prince." "That's Miss Prince to you," she corrected, but without heat, "at least for now." The party moved forward with cake and presents, but the real moment came after most guests had left. They sat with Alexander in his treehouse, the Manhattan skyline spreading out before them. "Buddy," Shannon began carefully, "remember your birthday wish?" Alexander nodded eagerly. "For us to be together forever." "Well," Maria continued, "we've been thinking about that. How would you feel if Daddy lived next door, with a special door between our homes so we could all be together whenever we want?" Their son's face lit up with pure joy. "Really? Forever?" "Really," Shannon confirmed. "I'll be right here whenever you need me. Both of you," he added, glancing at Maria. Alexander launched himself at both of them, creating a family hug that brought tears to Maria's eyes. Over their son's head, her eyes met Shannon's, seeing in them the same mix of hope and caution she felt. Later, after Alexander was asleep, they stood on the terrace under the stars. The city hummed below them, but up here it felt like they were in their own world. "I know this isn't the reunion you hoped for," Maria said softly, "living separately, moving slowly." "It's more than I deserve," Shannon interrupted. "After what I did, I'm grateful for any chance to be near you both, to prove myself worthy of this second chance." Maria turned to face him, really looking at the man she had once loved so completely, the man who had broken her heart, but was now piecing it back together with patient dedication. "You've changed," she observed. "I had to," he replied simply. "Losing you, missing Alexander's early years, it broke something in me. But maybe that breaking was necessary. The man I was didn't deserve you. I'm trying to become someone who does." The night air was cool, but Maria felt warm as Shannon's hand found hers again. They had a long way to go, many conversations still to have, trust still to rebuild, but standing here, with their sleeping son just inside and the stars above, it felt like a beginning. "We'll take it day by day," she said softly. "No promises except to be honest, to try, to put Alexander first always." "That's all I ask," Shannon agreed. "A chance to prove that love can be better the second time around, when it's built on wisdom instead of just passion." The New York night deepened around them as they stood together, not quite touching except for their joined hands. Below them, the city pulsed with life and possibility. Above them, the stars twinkled like promises of better days to come. Somewhere in Nevada, Bella Dakota sat in a tiny office, Her dreams of power turned to dust. But here, on a Manhattan terrace, a family was slowly rebuilding itself, not on lies or manipulation, but on truth, understanding, and the kind of love that grows stronger for having been tested by fire. Alexander slept peacefully in his room, his birthday wish partially granted. His parents stood under the stars, not quite together but no longer apart, finding their way back to each other one careful step at a time. Sometimes, Maria reflected, the greatest love stories aren't about passionate beginnings or dramatic reunions. Sometimes they're about the quiet courage it takes to try again, to forgive, to believe that what was broken can be rebuilt into something even more beautiful. The night wrapped around them like a promise as they stood together, watching their city, planning their future, writing the next chapter of their story one careful word at a time.